Shalom, giving our honor, all praise, and all glory to Yahweh, Bashem, Yahushai, Bashem, Arachak Wadash, the understood elder apostles and bishops of the great millstone that rule well. And as always, peace, blessings, and salutations to the hopeful elect tabernacle of David scattered abroad across the four winds of the earth. Now this video caught my attention. I saw the title, Woman Speaks Straight Facts on Why the Black Church is 80% Women. And you can definitely go into the modern Christian church, especially predominantly among our people. And when you go in there, that's mainly who you're going to see. You're going to see a bunch of so-called black women. A lot of them are going to be older, a lot of grandmothers, a lot of single mothers, and you'll rarely see any men. And the few men that you do see there, they're simps, docile, not austere. They usually compromise their masculinity to serve the woman, and she's more than likely the reason why he's even there. His mind ain't there, but he has to be present, to appease her. But those are the kind of men that are left in the church. And then the rest of the males are just, the sons and grandsons of the women that are there in attendance. So that's definitely the reality. That's what you'll definitely see in a modern Christian church. A lot of the men, they checked out a long time ago. They didn't see the hypocrisy, the manipulation, the grifting. So a lot of men, which men, they're more logical creatures. So if shit don't add up, he's gonna lose interest, and he's gonna go to where, it makes the most sense for him. And the Christian church was never it. All right, following a blue-eyed, stringy-haired devil, and watching your women, bow on her knees and throw her hands up and scream. She's doing all this in being subservient, to a false image, and you're supposed to be subservient to her while she's subservient to the devil. So this woman right here, she's going to basically break it down. All right. And then we'll get a few scriptures. I'm not going to make this a long video, but that's very eye-opening, and that should, let you men out there know that you're never supposed to let your woman lead. All right, matter of fact, I'll start with this precept. You follow these women, you following her right to destruction. Guys, this is Isaiah 3, verse 12. It says, "As for my people, children of their oppressors, and women rule over them." And that's the men that you see in the church. The men that are still attending these church services, whether they in the audience and they clapping along to the music, listening to this choreographed sermon, by the grifter that stands at the pulpit. And some of these men, they willing to learn from female pastors. You got female pastors running the church and collecting up all the money. Probably got multiple husbands behind the scenes. This is just straight up wickedness all throughout the other Christian church. All right. And it's become a joke, over the course of time. So a lot of men, they saw what it was. All right. So the men that still remain there is because they're more than likely ruled by their women. It says, "And women rule over them O my people, they which lead thee cause thee to err and destroy the way of thy paths. All right. And as you as a man, you shouldn't have no woman leading you. She should not be making all the decisions in the household. She should not be usurping authority, as the scriptures say. But Israel is just so cut out, so far removed from order, that you got this dynamic. So anyway, let's listen to a little bit of this, and then we'll get a few more precepts.
There is a black pastor by the name of Jamal Bryant that made a comment that the black church, and I guess he's talking about the black church in America, is 80% women. And he was talking about how men just aren't showing up in the church. Now, he said it's because the way the church is not really reaching the black men's needs, da 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 da. He even made a comment that in Islam, the church is attended by 80% black men. And I'm just like, I feel like I feel like he's intentionally leaving out a really, really important factor here. Black men ain't fucking with the church. Black men ain't fucking with the church. I used to go to church I used to go to church, and I used to see how the pastors would always
and black men right now, so-called black men, in the wake of this manosphere movement, they're not dealing with so-called black women as well. So not only are they leaving the church and plantation Renaissance Christianity, but they also are getting away from you so-called black women, because you uphold this white Renaissance plantation Christian ideology, and you impose it on him. He's done with that. So-called black man is done with that. Seeing how devoted Eve is to a Edomite god, a Edomite deity. And then looking at this woman that's speaking, I'm pretty sure she sees what's going on, but I'm looking at that septum ring in her nose. This one, men, they see that and they turn away too. That's one of those signs, all right, to get the hell away from her. Usually women that got them septum rings, that means something. Anyway, let's just keep going.
Play on our emotions as women. And I say our emotions as women because before I became emotionally logical, I was operating totally in emotion. And so you had all these women would be in church, flying their hand, crying and weeping, and their men would be sitting there looking at them like, is she serious? Like, it's not that serious. Like, oh my God, she's like literally crying and da-da-da. Men you're not manipulating them emotionally. And that's what they're doing in the church. So men today are not going to church because they see the manipulation.
And that's the point. Men tend to be more logical. That's, a man's nature to be logical. Now, men become emotional when they're raised by an emotional creature, which the women tends to be more emotional. So men that been raised, under a male structure, because matriarchy is what destroyed the family structure. Men that tend to, use their head and think logically and not emotionally, they see everything for what it is. They know that the Christian church is very inconsistent. It's a lot of deception. It's a lot of hypocrisy. So women, they're more easily to manipulate because they're emotional. And that's exactly why the serpent knew to go to Eve rather than to go straight to Adam. You see? So this is actually, in fact, correct. That's another part of the reason why you see majority women in the church than the men, because the women are more easily manipulated than the men are. So these men, they have a way of getting into the heads of these women to get them to follow them. And even the scriptures say it. Let's go to 2 Timothy, the 3rd chapter. Let's see what it say in the Amplified, but we're going to go to 2 Timothy 3 and verse 6. And it says, for among them are those, I'll start at 5. It says, holding to a form of outward godliness, religion, although they have denied its power, for their conduct nullifies their claim of faith. In other words, being hypocritical. You have this appearance like as if you're devoted to the Most High and you really serve, in your religion, but your behavior and the acts that you do shows that you're really not standing firm or true to your religion. All right. And you see a lot of this in the Christian church. A lot of people in the Christian church are what you would call cultural Christians. They don't follow the Most High by the book. We got a lot of our people that like to try to fit the Bible to their life rather than to fit their life to the standards of the Bible. And then, they'll act like the Most High is dealing with them as long as they attend church service, give a few dollars, give up their rent money or whatever to this lying, grifting preacher. And all he's doing is manipulating so he can continue to get money out of you. When the Lord said, those they that have no money, come and buy. All right. So it's easy to manipulate these women and get them to follow you and also get them to give up that bread. So really, church, the so-called black church, is just an hustle. You advertise and stir up these women's emotions. They'll give to you. They'll follow you and they'll give to you, man. It says, avoid such people and keep far away from them. You in there, hallelujah, praise God. You acting holier than thou. You got your Sunday's best on. But then when you get home, you got a seafood boil. You eating all type of abomination that's throwing off your pH balance and contributing to your sickness. While you got to be on meds. You're not modest. You're only modest on Sunday. You got your ass and your tits out. You don't cover yourself. You don't cover your head when you're praying. You're in there calling on Jesus and Yeshua. Those are not even the Lord's names. So, yeah, and I seen it with my own eyes as a child, man. I saw all them women up in there, and they would be acting holier than thou. But when you actually get to meet them, these women were mean as hell. A lot of them were masculine, and the men would be feminine. And I hated going up in the church service. I would actually be more excited when they would usher us out to go over to the church that I was going to briefly when I was younger. They had like across the street from the church, the little section of it that the students would go to for studies, for Bible studies. And we would go over there, and then it would be like a regular school day. We'd be over there, and they'll attempt to crack open the Bible and read a couple verses, but Jay ain't paying attention. We in there clowning. We in there flirting. And then next thing you know, time go by, and then we get ushered back out, and that's when church is let out, and you go. And I used to go with relatives, but then after a while, my mom, she wasn't going, and we wasn't going. The only time I would go is if I had spent the night, with certain relatives whose moms was straight up faithfully in the church, and she recommended that when you go, you better dress with the appropriate attire, meaning you have to have slacks on and a dress shirt. You have to damn near dress like a Bill Cosby, Cliff Huxtable, and she'd get on you if you had on regular clothes. So but at home she cussing like a sailor. You know she was very masculine. She was a career oriented woman. You know, probably working nursing or whatever, work at the hospital. So she had that feminist mindset. A man couldn't really. She'll get with a man. She'll be with a man, but she's not gonna submit. So these are the type of women that are there. The men ain't. Hell no. It says for verse 6, for among them are those who worm their way into homes and captivate morally weak and spiritually dwarfed women weighed down by the burden of their sins, easily swayed by various impulses. And these women, they have all type of things going on in their life. So when they get to the church, he's saying all the right things, everything that the woman want to hear. She's captivated by his speech, in which the scriptures say, for they serve not our Lord Yahweh Shai, but their own belly, by good words and fair speeches, deceiving the hearts of the simple. And these women, they're definitely simple. Especially when you view everything emotionally, that's foolish. So this is what's captivating and bringing all these women in, right? And you got Israelite groups that move the same way, just like the Christian church. This is why they got a gang of women in their congregation. And I always say, when you have a school, a congregation, and it's filled with a lot of women, it's an increased chance that there's going to be some kind of scandal or some messiness within your congregation. That's why Paul said, the Lord is not the author of confusion. But in the church, he it's commanded that women shall learn in silence. Let your women keep silence in the churches, because you had a lot going on. Even back then, you had women trying to teach in the congregation. It says, always learning and listening to anybody who will teach them, but never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. So they just leave their mind open, for Satan to get up in there and seduce her with anything that makes her, feel a certain way, instead of just learning the truth and accepting it. So, yeah, this is why you'll find a bunch of these women in the churches, and there's always scandals in the church. There's always, something going on. A lot of adultery goes on. The pastor, he running through the first row. Some of the women married. They showed you that in that movie, Which Way Is Up, with Richard Pryor, man. Even though that was a spoof, but that's reality. That's what really goes down. There's always something, man. It's always some type of money scheme, and women falling for it. So men, they checked out. Like, there's too much. And we ain't getting nowhere. This ain't making our condition any better. Why should I continue to give my money over here? And I think when you read the NLT, it's talking about the women. Yeah, verse 7, it says, such women are forever following new teachings, but they are never able to understand the truth. So, yeah, man. Now let me get Timothy, because like I said, the hold up. Yeah, 1 Timothy 2. The serpent, he knew to go to Eve, and there's a reason for that. This is 1 Timothy 2, and I'm going to start at verse 9. It says, and I want women to be modest in their appearance. They should wear decent and appropriate clothing. And you see the women now, even in the church, they'll wear skin-tight dresses. So basically, you see their curve. You still see the size of their behind, even under the dress. And sometimes they'll be up in there, look like they damn near twerking up in there. Some of them, they actually do be in there twerking. You're supposed to be in the house of God, but you causing lust of the eyes in the church, bouncing your big ass up and down in the dress, and nobody's gonna tell this woman to walk her to the side or when y'all let out of church, pull her to the side and be like, hey sister, like what do you should dress a little more modest than that. Wear something more looser. And stop with the dancing like you in a nightclub. If you trying to attract men, there's a way of doing that. But all you're gonna do is get a man that just want to smash and then dash. It says they should wear decent and appropriate clothing. That's why women in these other cultures, primarily in the Islamic culture, even though we know that that's a false religion, but they have order over there with their women. This is why they stay covered up, and they even are veiled. Back in the ancient world, women were veiled, and that was cover themselves so that they can be shamefaced. In this society, women are the opposite of shamefaced. They let it all hang out. She's a brick house, and they just let it all hang out, man. It says, and not draw attention to themselves by the way they fix their hair or by wearing gold or pearls or expensive clothes. Women trying to make fashion statements, and it's all vanity. The Most High ain't pleased with none of that. He don't care. The Lord, he doesn't care about your outward appearance, man. It's about it's about your inner person, what you do, and as far as your conduct. It says, for women who claim to be devoted to the Most High should make themselves attracted by the good things they do. Women should learn quietly and submissively. I do not let women teach men or have authority over them. And the Christian church has the complete opposite. Let them listen quietly, for the Most High made Adam first, and afterward he made Eve. And it was not Adam who was deceived by Satan, which it was the serpent, it was the actual man. But he had the spirit of Satan on him. The woman was deceived, and sin was the result. So knowing that she has the inability to be logical, she can easily be beguiled. So a seducing spirit who's not in the spirit of the coming in the spirit of the Most High can deceive her. These Christian pastors, they're the ones that's leading these women, and all these pastors in the churches are all false. They're false leaders. They're false prophets. All right, they're misleading them, and like the scriptures say, if the blind shall lead the blind, and if the blind shall lead the blind, they both shall fall into a ditch. So that's why a lot of women, they're not going to make it. All right, and that's the broad way. That's the easier way. And it said that many, the Lord said, many that be that shall go in thereat. Because straight and narrow is the way that lead to life. And a lot of people are not going to go that route. Women, they love things to be more easier and comfortable. They like the easy route. Here in the truth, the path is a bit more straight. And when sisters listen to us, we tend to be a bit harsh, with the criticism. We get on them. And if you're able to take that, then hey, that's a good sign. Because it's tough love at the end of the day. But our women ain't spent decades of, being pedestalized and being told the things that they would want to hear and it really to stroke their ego. Never having to deal with accountability and criticism. Because you was always told that, you're the world. All right. When men are supposed to, do for you and this and that and the third, all these gynocentric ideas, feminist ideas, that everything revolved around you. You can basically do no wrong. You could do bad all by yourself. And that's not what the Bible teaches. The Bible teaches for the woman to submit, to be feminine, to be lovers of their husbands. And they don't do that. They don't enforce that in the church. That's why she's by herself. So I'll read this last verse. It says, but women will be saved through childbearing, assuming they continue to live in faith, love, holiness, and modesty. And that's for, the sisters that are in the truth. All right. But this is why this is why the devil, all right, the serpent went to Eve first, because she was more easier to be manipulated. All right. And that's why, we have the attitude here, to stay on you. All right. Really the whole body, starting with the men, so that you don't gravitate anywhere else. Because you can be seduced and led astray and err away from the body by giving in to seducing spirits, teaching doctrines of devils. Because he also warned about that too. And they're not gonna endure sound doctrine. So you're gonna have men that's gonna happen to. The same way Eve, she got beguiled away from the original order when she listened to the damn serpent. He seduced her and made sin sound very attractive to her. 2 Corinthians 11:1 in the NLT, it says, I hope you will put up with a little more of my foolishness. Please bear with me, for I am jealous for you with the jealousy of the Most High God himself. I promise you as a pure bride to one husband, Yahushai. But I fear that somehow your pure and undivided devotion to Yahushai will be corrupted, just as Eve was deceived by the cunning ways of the serpent. You happily put up with whatever anyone tells you, like these women, right? Like these women, ever learning and never able to come into the knowledge of the truth. Is whatever sounds good. Even if they preach a different Jesus, a different Yahushai than the one we preach, or a different kind of spirit than the one you received, or a different kind of gospel than the one you believed. And that can happen. So, the scriptures tell us to mark them which cause divisions and offenses contrary to the doctrine which we learn, and not, happily put up with any doctrine that anybody is teaching you. And that's why you'll have certain people that'll go from congregation to congregation. All right. This group to that group to that group, because they have no foundation. All right. Easily manipulated. So Yeah, man, this was on point. So far, she was on point. All right, and that's why a lot of so-called black men they left the building. Who's still remaining in the building? Eve, and that's not a good thing. So anyway, hopefully y'all edified him and give all honor, praise, and glory to y'all by Shemal Shai. To the next one, Shalom.